So today, I want to talk about phishing. Not the kind with like a net and a rod and you literally catch fish, but the cybersecurity kind, the kind where people use messaging like email or text messages to trick people into taking some kind of action. So in this video, I'm going to explain what phishing is. I'm going to give some examples of different phishing methods that attackers use, and also give 5 examples or 5 techniques that can be used to make phishing really difficult for attackers. There's loads of detail we could go into here about phishing, but I'm going to keep this explanation pretty high level, pretty brief, and make this one a short video. So why is phishing interesting, and why do I think that everyone in cybersecurity should understand it? Now, I started out in cybersecurity around 2014. I remember back then just being so amazed by the amount of attacks that leveraged phishing successfully, and they were so common. And there wasn't a lot of inventiveness from the attackers because it just worked every time. Also back then, I was really surprised that the attacks were so common because again and again, attackers were using the same tactics, techniques, and procedures. They were doing the same things, yet so many companies were falling for that. So today, phishing is still really common. It's a very popular technique used by attackers. They're innovating a little bit and finding new ways to get around security controls, but it's a tried and tested way to get that initial access in an organization. So let's talk about some examples of phishing. So one of the first ones is phishing by attachment or phishing by link. If you look up the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is this big taxonomy of different cyber attack tactics and techniques, you'll see them both in there. And they can be used for the same end. So for example, an attacker might send in a malicious macro that's embedded in some sort of Office document like Excel or Word. They'll either send that as an attachment to the email, so literally attached to it, or the link where you click the link or then download the file. A really common thing you see with this type of phishing is some sort of lure within the email to trick the user into clicking the link and downloading the document or opening the attachment. And often it will be something that will say, please see the attached quote or attached invoice. Sometimes a bit more devious, it might say, hey, have you seen the photos of you in this attached file? And that can be enough for a lot of users, because let's face it, as employees, often we're very much attuned to clicking on links, opening emails and opening attachments. That can be enough for somebody just to take that action. And this is a classic attacker phishing technique, particularly the using macros. It's become a little bit dated because Microsoft had actually done some pretty good work on making macro phishing a little bit harder for attackers, and they found some really interesting ways around that. But again and again, you still see folks using this type of phishing to gain access, particularly ransomware groups. Now I've written, and I'll leave some links in the description, I've written about some recent ransomware attacks that used phishing and macros as the initial access vector. And I think we'll continue to see for a long time attackers using phishing, not necessarily macros, but other types of documents or other types of files to gain that access into organizations. The second example I can think of phishing is credential phishing. Now, with a lot of cloud services now, all you need is a username and a password, and you've got access to things like email, OneDrive, OneNote, Dropbox, all these different things. And attackers are getting very good at sending emails that look like they're from those services. So they look like they're from Office 365 or from Dropbox, for example, saying you've got a security issue, you need to reset your password, something of this nature. And when you click that link, it drops you to a pixel perfect copy of the login page for that service. You bang in your username and password, that gets sent to the attacker, then they've got access to those services. You're probably thinking that, well, most of us now are using multi-factor authentication. So these either text messages or authenticator codes you got on a phone app that mean the attacker also needs access to those. Well, for a while that did slow them down, but now they're getting very, very good at something called attacker in the middle, which is where when you put in your username and password, they can also trick you into giving away either an MFA code or the authentication token that the MFA relies on to work on your machine. And then they're also bypassing MFA and getting access. The third example I can think of is business email compromise. And this is a really common use of phishing by attackers. And this is where they impersonate a trusted party, somebody like maybe a supplier, accountants, lawyers, etc. And they trick the victim into transferring money to them. So this can often be something like sending in an invoice and saying, hey, our bank account details have changed. Here's our new details. Sometimes we've also seen attackers compromise those firms directly, so those suppliers, law firms, accountants, all those kinds of things, and then use that to socially engineer their way into another victim. It's quite impressive attacks. It's really frustrating. There's been huge losses, both in businesses, unfortunately on the personal side as well, where people have lost entire house deposits or house payments because somebody's compromised the email chain, changed bank details within that, and then unfortunately people have paid money to the wrong people. So how do we defend ourselves from this? Now, most organisations that I've worked with or that I've joined already have pretty good mail filtering tooling. They might have a dedicated mail filter or phishing prevention tool, or they're using something like Office 365 or Google Workspaces that has functionality to prevent phishing. But often, and I've seen this time and time again, they're not configured, they're not switched on, or there's extra features that they're not leveraging. So first of all, if you're looking at helping secure your company from phishing, I really recommend look at what you've already got. Is it all turned on? Is it all configured? Is it doing what it's meant to do? But if you don't have tooling and you think you've got a gap there, go to market. There are some fantastic phishing prevention tools on the market at the moment. Now, there's a little bit of a mixture in different techniques. So I've seen some that are quite kind of black box. So you kind of turn them on and you turn on their features and they do their thing, and kind of that's that, and you just trust it to operate. So really good if having low maintenance is your thing. And there's some other ones that are really advanced, really sophisticated, where you can deeply configure what they do and create some really cool rules to prevent phishing. There's a little bit more overhead there, but in my view, because this is such a key area that attackers are always using, it's worth investing, it's worth spending time, it's worth doing this properly, because phishing, from what I can see, it's not going anywhere and it's going to continue to be a threat for us. The other thing you can do, particularly if you're using tools like Exchange Online, is add a warning banner to the top of any external message. And it's a little bit love-hate that. Some people think it's a good idea. Others think users just become blind to it anyway. But I have seen examples where users have reported a suspicious email, and the only thing that triggered them to think it was suspicious was the fact it had the warning banner on the top. It works for some people, not for everybody, but it is free and it's something most organizations can turn on really quickly. Another common tool is user training. So kind of e-learning for people that explains to them what phishing is, how they can detect it, how they can not be victims to it. And I'm a little bit torn in this space. I think it's a valuable thing to do. It can cost money and it can take time to set up. So if you're short on budget, it isn't maybe the most impactful thing to do. And if it prevents 1 or 2 phishing emails being clicked by users, that's a good thing. But I'm always curious how effective it truly is. For instance, doing something like annual e-learning. Is that really going to move the needle for people? I'd love to be convinced otherwise. I think it might be valuable. Something to explore. Lots of firms do it for compliance reasons. As I said, I'm not fully sold. Another area you can explore is phishing simulations. So this is where you send fake phishing emails to your users. If they click on it, they might get some e-learning or some training to explain why it was a phishing email and what they need to look for next time. Now, that's been a little bit discredited recently. It used to be really popular and really common that you'd run these tests and you'd get metrics on how many people clicked and who didn't, and those that didn't get more e-learning or training from security or whatever. But of late, the feeling is that it damages the employer-employee trust. It frustrates people. It's very questionable if it really improves the click rate on phishing emails. And it's tough because this is what we do all day. We respond to emails, we open attachments, we click links, and are users the best place to put our effort into preventing phishing? Now, I'm a little bit conflicted in this. I think maybe it's got value in the right way if you focus on the folks that are most likely to receive really impactful phishing emails, maybe folks that work in finance that can improve payments, can change payment details. That kind of makes a lot of sense. But for an entire user base, I think I might need some convincing. Now, number 4, and this is a really easy one, although it has a cost, is you can encourage users to report suspicious emails to an address. So create phishing at your company and say to people, if you see a suspicious email, report it to us. And that's some great benefits, right? You get a suspicious email, you can check who's received it, you can see why it didn't get caught by your phishing filter, you can go and remove all the copies of the email that others may have received. But the risk is just the overhead. And I guarantee this, if you go this path, you'll get lots of people reporting just spam emails. So there's an overhead where you need to have somebody review all of those, potentially action them. It's not as easy as it sounds. But another thing I'll guarantee is it will catch phishing emails. ones that have been delivered, and you can go back and figure out why that happened. So number 5, test your phishing controls. There's some tooling out there now that can generate thousands of phishing emails using different techniques, different payloads. Fire them at your email address, and then you can see what got delivered and what didn't, and where you've got improvement opportunities in your phishing filter. So that's all I wanted to cover today. I think if you're looking at securing your organization, or you're an aspiring security leader, preventing phishing is a fantastic place to start. It's such a commonly used tactic. We're going to continue to see it used for a long time. There's some great tooling out there. There's already some great expertise. I'll leave lots of links in the description to this video about those. But I hope you found this useful. Certainly, I'm a big fan of trying to prevent phishing emails. I think it's a really important area for security. It's a great place to start as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again next time.